Hey, the title of this video is From Hipaa to Hippie. And you're looking at some excerpts from the video on YouTube entitled Hippie Fest 2021, Logan, Ohio, Sunday, drums, and other stuff. Now, I was not aware that there are people out in society right now wanting to imitate the hippie movement of the 1960s. However, this video indicates that there are plenty of individuals who want to relive the hippie movement, or perhaps continue the hippie movement, however you want to see it. Now, this video is really not about hippies, but I found out that when I do videos and I try to use some other topic as a distraction or as a background, a lot of people love that topic and never mind the other topic. So if you want to comment on the hippie movement still alive, that'd be great. I'm all for it. But I just want you to know I'm using this as a metaphor for openness. Basically, the hippie movement made everything out in the open. And by that I mean drug usage was in the open. At the time in the 60s, the drugs would have been considered illegal. Now, I know there's many states right now that have legalized marijuana and other such drugs. But in the 60s, the usage of marijuana and psychedelic drugs was illegal. But basically, the hippie movement was about bringing that out into the open and just saying, honestly, I smoke this, or I take this particular pill, the acid, and I trip or I get high, and I'm a hippie. Now, it also was about bringing out into the open sexual behavior that at the time in the 60s, a man and a woman living together outside of marriage was anathema. And that particular movement to shack up was very popular in the 60s. And it was countercultural in that that was not the way of the culture for a man and a woman to live together or engage together in sexual relations. So I'm just using this as a metaphor. But however, you may want to talk a little bit about the hippie movement and that. So the metaphor is from Hipaa to hippie. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've got to take a look at the nature of the Hipaa, which was passed in 1996 as part of legislation that basically was an act of Congress. Act. Remember, they're acts in a play, which means they're not really laws for sovereigns. However, everybody's under the acts because we are corpses with orations.
All
All right, so the Hipaa stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. The Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act of 96 is a federal, I'm going to say federal act, not law, but they use the word law, that required the creation of national standards to protect sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or knowledge. In other words, your health information was to be kept private. So we've gone from that to now everyone's health information is out in the open. And that raises a question. And this was another article that came out. As you can see, just the title of the article. Are these, I'm not going to say the name of it, covered under Hipaa? Well, basically speaking, the answer would be yes. Now, I've had contact with the health field for many, many years, and I know that doctors, nurses, hospitals, nursing homes do not disclose anything about anyone with respect to health information, and sometimes even a location of where the individual may be residing. In other words, they keep their mouths shut. And rightfully so. When this came about, the Hipaa, that is, it seemed rather stringent at the time, but as time proceeded, I realized personally it was a good thing in the sense that it's not my business of what someone else's health issues are. And it's not their business of what my health issues are. So we have gone from Hipaa to, guess what? Hippie. Where we're now open about this. And you are going to be asked questions by your employer or even by your friends and neighbors about whether you received something in the medical field or did not receive it. So that's why I have the images of the hippies now. So you're to be open about anything and everything in your personal medical life and history. Now, how did we go from Hipaa or from Hipaa to hippie? Can't those who are in control over us make up their minds? Well, obviously, there are purposes for what is done at the time. So there were purposes for the Hipaa legislation at the time. Now there are purposes to let go of it. And I can say that I've actually had several examples of this whole idea of now everyone is entitled to ask these questions. And it will make or break you if you can participate in something. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I know of a case where there, within a particular city, there was a symphony, and the head of the symphony and the organization's insisting that all the players in the symphony get one of these. And I happened to go by an individual that was discussing with another individual about him not receiving one of these. And the implications would be that that individual could no longer participate in the symphony. I also know of a situation of an individual who enjoys playing cards with a card playing group. In other words, they get together once a week and they play whatever type of cards they want to play. In this particular case, it's playing bridge. And the individual filled in for another individual. And several in the group made inquiries. Did you get one of these? And the individual was then made to feel as if he, she, whoever did not belong anymore to that card playing group. Now, I'm also told that many employers are insisting that in order to remain on job, they must receive one of these. Now, is it proper? Is it correct? Is it, quote, legal? In a way, it doesn't matter because the pressure is there. And many, many people will give in and then eventually get one of these. Why? Because of outside pressure to be in conformity. So how did we go from Hipaa How did we go? In 1996, to imagery of this. How did we go from things being private to now everything is out in the open? Drug usage, sexual behavior. Those would be the two biggest things, I think, from the hippie movement. The open drug usage. And again, back in the 60s, weed, hashish, marijuana, LSD were all considered illegal. And indeed, one could be fined and or imprisoned for possession of those drugs. Now, I know that there are many states currently in the United States that have legalized marijuana, but I'm referring to the 60s when it was not legal. Now we are in the same situation with respect to medical. That what was once considered private now is what? Out in the open. So I'm not going to debate this question that's raised here by this news starry ABC. I'm not going to debate it. I'm not going to insist. I'm raising the question. How did we go from privacy to openness now? And that's what I'd like you to think about, that there's something mighty wrong, that this can happen so quickly, that what was once considered completely an individual's private matter and private choice now has become public. And because some of you do watch the end of my videos, I want to add one other thing for those of you that will stay with me and not click off and click on to something else. I recall several years ago when my physician said, "Would you like to have your medical records online?" And I said no. They gave me a paper. "Would you like to have your medical records online and your medical chart online?" And I said no. And I just said no 3 times or 4. And guess what? I got an email that said, "You can now check your medical records online with my chart." Did it really matter that they asked me? No. Were they going to put all my medical information online? Yes. Now supposedly it's private, but if it's online, there's nothing that stops other providers from getting it, or for that matter, whoever has access to the codes to get to it. In other words, it could be broadcast to the entire world. How did we go from Hipaa to Hippie? Well, I'd like to thank you for watching. And as always, I want to give praise and honor and glory to Jesus Christ, who knew me before the foundation of the world, and who loved me before the foundation of the world. Paul tells us in his epistles, especially Ephesians chapter 1, that's the great love that God had for me. He knew all my medical history, and yet he still loved me and gave his very life for me. Thank you for watching this video. End of video.